All right, guys, I got some new polling data that I want to share with you. And I must admit, this is an example of polling data driving me crazy. Okay, so Gallup released an issues poll here where they asked the American people, what do you think is the most important problem facing the country today? And look at these results. So, February 2024, immigration is number one, 28 points. Government is number two with 20%. By the way, you're about to see here, I think the way that they did this poll is kind of absurd, right? Because it's messed up in a number of different ways. So when they say like economy in general, that's at 12%, but then they have inflation right next to it, poverty, hunger, homelessness underneath it. You could just throw that all into economy, right? So, if you do the math on that, let's see, 22, 32, 33, 39. So it would be 39 if you put economy, inflation, and poverty, hunger, homelessness together, then economy's number one. And that's all economy stuff, right? So I don't like the way that they did this, but according to them, number one is immigration. Then you have government, economy in general, 12%, inflation, 11%, poverty, homelessness, 6%. Unifying the country. This is that whole like, bro, why can't we just like have conversations, bro? Like get along and stuff, bro. That's 4%, race relations 4%, federal budget deficit 3%, crime, violence 3%, elections, election reform, and democracy is 3%. Lack of respect for each other, which again is the same as like the unifying the country thing. It's the exact same idea. Bro, we need to have conversations and like get along, bro. We need to be able to disagree, but do it agreeably. 3% for that. Ethics, moral, religious decline, 3%. Judicial system, courts, laws, 3%. Foreign policy, foreign aid, focus overseas, 3%. Healthcare, 3%. Like, again, so like foreign policy. If you had put a category that said Israel and Gaza, or put a category that says Ukraine and Russia, or put those together, my guess is it'd be higher than 3%. But the way they framed it, foreign policy / foreign aid / focus overseas, I don't know. If you change the wording to war, just like something like war, I think it would poll higher, right? Healthcare is all the way down there at 3% as well. That's interesting to me that that's all the way down there at 3%. So look, when I look at this poll, I have massive, massive issues with how the poll was done. That's point number one. But point number two, like either way, it's kind of amazing, this poll. So now immigration, it really is the economy when you put all the economic stuff together. That's really number one. But like having it as high as it is at 28%, look, I'm not saying immigration is a non-issue. We're definitely dealing, in many cities, there's a surge in immigrants, and it's basically put the cities in a position where from just like a practical and pragmatic perspective of like putting a roof over everybody's head and putting food in their belly and, addressing them in terms of the process and adjudicating whether or not they could be there, et cetera. Like all that, it's just putting stress on the system to the point where a lot of cities like can't handle it. I mean, we already have like a housing crisis before they get here, and then you have more here, and it's like, well, what exactly are we going to do? And so you see a lot of these cities panicking and not knowing exactly how to deal with it, and like it is a real issue. I'm not trying to downplay it like it's not a real issue. It is a real issue. But having said that, I don't think it's possible for it to get to the number one issue in the country, according to this poll, without tremendous media propaganda, where they put such a focus on it that it just shoots up in the minds of people as like, this must be the most important issue. Sort of like a lemming effect. Like, I don't know, they're talking about it all the time. It's got to be that. Because objectively speaking, it's just not the number one issue. In fact, there are many, many different ways in which immigration is phenomenal, not just for our economy, but for any economy. Like there's real good data on this that immigration is a net benefit. Now, again, I just explained how, the way you go about it matters, and having too much of an influx at the wrong time and not having the facilities to manage it at the infrastructure level in various places, that's a real issue. But as a general rule, immigration actually is sort of good for a country. And so to have this as the number one issue, as if like it's really bad, really, really bad, I don't know. That just strikes me as you can't get there without massive propaganda. You just can't get there. And so right off the bat, I mean, and by the way, issues that are not in here, I would argue corruption, right? Or if you were to phrase it as like big money controlling our politicians or corporations and billionaires controlling our politicians. My guess is you throw that in there, that would rank pretty high as well. So it just strikes me as they don't like this poll wasn't very well done. But even given that, the answers are kind of infuriating because you can't get immigration to be the number one issue unless there's been a massive effort from the Republican Party, also the Democratic Party aiding and abetting this, and the media to be like, highlight this, highlight this, highlight this, highlight this. Okay, but this is just one example of polls that drive me crazy. There was another one. I actually didn't pull this one up, but it just occurred to me now. I had forgotten about it. There was one poll that was like, it was over 60%. Over 60% of Americans said, the Democratic Party has moved too far left. But it's like they say that, and then when you go to any poll where you ask issue for issue, Americans are solidly on the left, way to the left of Democratic politicians. Right? I mean, we've gone through it. We don't need to bring it all up here. But you ask people, do you want to raise the minimum wage? Yes. Overwhelming majority. You ask people, do you want to raise taxes on the rich? Yes. Overwhelming majority. You ask people, do you want to raise taxes on corporations? Yes, overwhelming majority. You ask people, do you want to expand Medicare and Medicaid? Yes, overwhelming majority. You go down the list of the issues, and people, universal health care, overwhelming majority. No matter if you do public option, it's a majority. If you do Medicare for all, it's a majority. So Democrats moved too far left. People don't even know what that means, but they're saying, yeah, the Democrats have moved too far left. Okay, it's sort of getting obnoxious and annoying now, right? Like, and I'm not one to go after the public. Usually it's like, the people who run the country are the actual problem, right? The politicians, the establishment. Everybody knows that. But also at the same time, when you keep getting results that just literally are head scratchers that make absolutely no sense, that people don't really know what the hell they're talking about, yeah, that's frustrating. Now, I got one more for you. This is a Harris poll, February 22nd. Democrats are trying to unfairly scare voters over Trump by labeling him as a dictator. 62% say, I agree. 62% say Democrats are unfairly tarring Trump with the label of dictator. 62%. You ready for this? Same poll, same company. Trump will act like a dictator if reelected. Agree. 56%. Okay. You cannot have it both ways. You can't say Democrats are unfairly smearing him as a dictator. 62% agree with that. And then have 56% say, oh yeah, he's going to act like a dictator if he's reelected. What? I'm against the thing you say that I totally agree with. What? And this is like all those polls. Is Trump a threat to democracy? Yes. Same poll. Trump 52, Biden 48. It's like, what? What is going on here? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. We've seen a million polls where it's like, if Trump is found guilty of one of his 91 criminal charges, should he be banned from running? And it's like 60% say yes. And then it's like, same poll, Trump up on Biden by 4 points. It's like, I just, at some point you have to say, nothing makes sense. At some point you have to say nothing makes sense. There is no consistency. There is no logic. A lot of the beliefs that people have are flat out contradictory. They don't realize it's contradictory. And it just is what it is, right? This is just the nature of reality. And it's absolutely infuriating, but it's the truth. So anyway, these things drive me crazy because then it's like, okay, well, how much can you take away from the polls? And by the way, we've seen another thing that's a knock on the polls happen recently. In the average of polls, Trump in every state is absolutely obliterating Nikki Haley. Now, he's still obliterating her in reality, but the polls are overstating his support by a lot. 7% in one state, 8% in another state, 10% in Michigan, which just happened. So, the polls are actually kind of off a lot on that front. On the Biden side, too, his polls are just down in the dumps. Down in the dump. I'm talking like 35% favorability type stuff. But then in the elections, it doesn't really indicate, he's acting more like a politician and getting the results more of a politician with like a 45% approval rating, not a 35% approval rating. Like, it's sort of understating the people who will vote for Biden. So, I don't know. These polls are all over the place. They make absolutely no sense. It drives me crazy. Because on the one hand, you want to look at the polls, use that to help inform your analysis. But at the same time, there's a massive asterisk because it's like, how much can you really when there's so much contradictory stuff? Well, I don't know what to tell you, man. These polls broke me. But I'm sure I'll continue to use polls. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.